Hi everybody. Quick video here today about putting JavaScript on a page. There we go. So we've talked about development environment, Visual Studio Code for macOS and Windows, and online IDEs for Chromebooks, Khan Academy, CodePen, GitHub, and eventually we'll get Caret T installed on those Chromebooks, and that's where you'll be working. So moving on. Reviewing HTML, the basic page structure. We've talked about this, but I want to do a quick review. We've got the doc type declaration and then the single element of the HTML element. It has two elements inside it, the head and the body. The head tells us about the page and the body has the contents. Notice in the head we've got this meta char set that sets it up to only use, to really look for that UTF-8 character set and avoid some conflicts with poorly formed HTML or some kinds of attacks. And then the structure demo is the title for this one. That shows up in the tab bar. So it is kind of content, but not really. It doesn't go on the page. There's a complete video walkthrough available on the Google Classroom. Okay, adding in JavaScript. There are two options. We can do it in page, and then it goes in the script element in the head. There are other places that it could go, but we'll talk about that later. And that's true with the script tag for external elements as well. Option 2 is external. That goes into a .js file that only contains JavaScript. It wouldn't need to have any HTML in it at all. And then that external piece goes in a script tag in the head. Okay, so the script we're going to put in is alert hello world. It's going to open a prompt window that says hello world. Alert is the command, so that's the instruction is alert. And then parentheses hold any options that the command needs. So this is calling a function that already exists in JavaScript. That parenthesis holds any options that the command needs. In this case, it needs a string, what it should display. We put our string in quotation marks to show that it's a string literal. We're not trying to use a variable or reference something else or anything. What we put in those quotes is exactly what we want it to show. Notice that you can use double quotes or single quotes if you like. And then that semicolon shows the end of the line. And that's a single line of JavaScript. Notice that JavaScript is case sensitive. Capital A alert is not the same as lowercase a alert. That becomes a big issue when you start talking about variables and what names you choose for variables. And when we get there, we'll talk about naming conventions and sort of choosing a strategy. Okay, first example, in-page script. We've got that exact same structure that we had before. We've changed to the title and so on. But the difference is we've included this script element here, and inside it we've put that. So drop that into your Visual Studio Code or Khan Academy or whatever and see what it does. If you're in Khan Academy, you're probably not going to get the full structure, so it won't work the same way. So example 2 is with external script. With external script, you still have that script element, only instead of putting some script inside it, you put this source attribute, src equals, and then in quotes you put the name of the file to access. So that points to this file sitting in the same folder in this case. We'll talk about how to target different folders later. Hello.js, and it has one line of code in it, alert hello world. So in this case we have two files. The advantage to external script is that you can run the same script on multiple pages, and it's a lot easier to debug and identify problems with if that script is isolated on its own. You should run this one too. All right, detailed version of where script goes. Most commonly it goes in the head element, whether it's as in-page script or as external script. It can work anywhere in the page, and sometimes there's a reason to do that. Some plugins for other websites will ask you to do that, but you should only do it if there's a compelling reason. Let's look at the page load sequence, and we'll identify why some other advice exists out there. So when you load a page, it fetches the HTML page. It then begins parsing the HTML, and then it encounters a script tag, especially one that references an external script file. So it has to stop doing its parsing of the HTML to go and get that script file, and the parser blocks, and it stops trying to render your HTML because it doesn't know if your JavaScript that it's referencing is going to change the information that's there. So it's got to go ahead and process that. And then after some time, the script is downloaded and then executed. And then the parser continues interpreting the rest of the HTML document. And that step 4 could sometimes slow things down, especially if you had a big JavaScript file and people don't want to sit around and wait for your page to load and show you stuff. So the outdated advice was put the JavaScript at the end. It was intended to speed up load time, so you would see what was on the page first, and then it would process that script. But there's a better way now. You can add one of 2 attributes to your script statement. You can add defer, so that the script loads in the background while the page is processing. It does not block the page content loading, and then it runs after the page is loaded and parsed. So it essentially does what putting it at the bottom did. Async, if your JavaScript doesn't automatically affect what's on the page, if it's got functions and it's timed out by itself, which is the way you should do it, then you can add async to it. And then what it does is it keeps processing that, and over on the other side, it keeps processing your HTML and figuring out how to parse it and display it. And then on a different thread, it goes and grabs that JavaScript. So if your script is totally independent, you add that async declaration on it, and then it loads separately from the page content. There are no timings guaranteed, but it's super efficient. It takes advantage of the structure, the way your computer is set up to do multiple things at once. And it's really great for scripts accessing services like Google. So you should try it out. Run the Hello World example with each option. Just add the word async into the tag for that first script and run it, and then run it with the defer instead. And I'll very quickly show you kind of what that looks like, since I haven't included a slide that does that. And then you'll note, I want you to note when content appears on the page versus when the alert box shows up, and then write a brief description of your findings. If I pop over to Visual Studio Code, you'll see right here what it looks like with the async, and then you can alternatively put in defer. And so you want to watch it and see when this part shows up. Okay, that's it for this video. Thanks, guys.